Once all the scans of all the organs are complete, a prompt will appear, and at this point you could click OK. And at this point the patient can remove the headphones and let go of the electrode. You're ready to interpret. Click on the top Express Monitoring line, and this will automatically bring up a window once you click the Interpretation button on the bottom. And once this a screen pops up, click on the top right graphic to bring up the current spectrogram database screen, where you can see a variety of options. But first click on number 01, multivariate analysis of systemic homeostasis. And this screen brings up information about the patient's weak organ systems, all of them at once. And particular attention should be paid to the lines marked in red with low diagnostic coefficients on the left-hand side. Coefficients between 0.0 and 0.1 represent processes that are actively in danger and very weak. Coefficients between 0.2 to 0.3 present processes that are chronically weak but still compensating, and coefficients between 0.4 and 0.5 represent processes that are in risk. Lines marked in green can be ignored since these represent organ systems that are compensated and are not at risk. It should be noted that the advantage of this method in comparison with others is that this method allows for the determination of the cause of the pathological state of the organ. It is not designed to confirm earlier diagnoses, but to find the weakest organ or system that has used up its compensatory capabilities. And in this Express Monitoring window scan, the researcher can accurately describe any violations of the system's compensatory capabilities. All the other scans that represent specific scans of each organ can be found in the current spectrogram database in another screen. So once you've seen all of the diseases, you can deselect, and selecting and deselecting brings up the diagnoses and the coefficients on the bottom. And you can, once you click on 05, which represents prospective diagnoses, or number 06, which is possible complications. These represent information regarding the pathological processes that may be occurring with the patient. So clicking on these, you can see that the microbiological flora that are also listed overall, the ones that are overall in the green. It should be noted that in this window, it's not particularly suitable to look at the microbiological flora, because these represent overall biological flora that are in the system, but instead to look at specific organs for specific diagnoses, and especially related to flora. So to do this, you click on the X, and then once again on the X on the bottom right, and select a particular organ system that is of interest. And of course highlight it and click Interpretation button again, and again on the top right graphic. And here we see that the microbiological flora is still marked with a check mark, and we see the real microbiological flora that are causing a problem. In this case, we see Lamblia intestinalis and Salmonella paratyphi. See that the Lamblia score, diagnostic coefficient, is very low, suggesting that this was more of a recent infection with this microbiological pathogen, whereas the Salmonella is weak, but since it's between 0.2 and 0.3, it's possibly represents past infections and not so much more of a recent problem. So once you can also place the diagnosed problems into the notepad. You can highlight it, the diagnosis on the bottom of the screen, and then press the hand button, and it'll automatically copy it into the notepad. And to look at the notepad, you can click on the binoculars, and there it pops up with the diagnostic coefficient as well as the problem that was discovered. You can do this also with diagnoses and possible complications. So check mark again in the top of the screen of the spectrograms, highlight the diagnosis, click on the hand icon, and then once again to look at the summary of everything you've put into the notepad, you can click on the binoculars, and there they are with the coefficients. The program also allows you to determine the possible level of potential aggression of a pathological process, and to do this you highlight the problem in question, or the diagnosis in question, and click the graph icon next to the X on the right. Notice that the coefficient can change. If it changes a little bit, then it's not that aggressive a process, but if it changes a lot, then the process has a lot, changes to a lower coefficient. Process can become much more aggressive. And if you can also change the diagnostic coefficient by clicking the binocular button and changing it to the lower number, because this represents a potential state of the problem can be worse. And likewise, you can do this, as another example, dysbacteriosis. You click the graph button, highlight dysbacteriosis. You see it became a little lower, but not that much. And gastroduodenitis, again, a little bit lower, but not that much. And if it's that big, you can highlight it and put it into the notepad, hit the binoculars, and then again change if it's all that different from within the notepad itself, the diagnostic coefficient. If recommendations are needed for possible foods to avoid or possible foods that are allowed, we can look at this in the blood cells scan. To do this, first we have to leave the current scan page by clicking X, and then on the bottom again X, scrolling down through all the scans, which are all themselves very necessary to go through, but for the purposes of this tutorial we'll just focus on one special case of blood cells, because that is the only place where food is recommended by blood type. So again, click on the interpretation button and then on the top right graphic, and deselect all the other checked options, and click on the 22-1 for the foods that should be eliminated from the diet based on the blood type. So for instance, in this case we see corn oil, radish, corn, and eggplant are all recommended based on the blood type. So for instance, for coconuts, if your patient has a blood type O, then he should avoid those coconuts. Likewise, to see what foods are good to eat, you can click on 22-2. You see that in this case, for instance, the top one is oranges and citrus fruits. Likewise, coffee and turnip. Usually the first three that are listed are the ones that are most important, so in this case, orange, lemon, and black coffee are good for, especially, and turnips especially for people with blood type O. At any time, you can always put any of the interesting findings into the notepad by clicking the hand button. Likewise, this blood scan is particularly good for determining any allergies. So to do this, you deselect 22-2 and click on 25. And here, any allergens that appear that would be appearing or have an effect on the patient would be marked in red. In this case, the coefficients don't mean as much as the color. So if you see something in red, that means that the patient might be allergic to that particular allergen.